This has been drafted in Pakistan, printed in Pakistan and distributed by the Taliban leadership to the fighters in the field. It lays down a code of conduct, how they are to behave while they are fighting this insurgency. Now, it's not a new code of conduct as such. One was distributed some years ago, but this has been updated, and of course it's being released now as the Taliban is bogged down in fighting both in Afghanistan against coalition troops and this side of the border in Pakistan against Pakistan troops in the northwest part of the country. Essentially, this is an attempt to try to win the hearts and minds of the civilian people. Let's read from a couple of quotes from it now. The first one addresses the question of suicide attacks. It says, "Suicide attacks should be at high value and important targets because a brave son of Islam should not be used for low value or useless targets." Now that, of course, is a reference to civilian casualties. They don't want to further alienate the people they need to support them. The high value targets, of course, being coalition forces, Pakistan forces, Afghan forces or government officials. It also goes on to say that it is strictly prohibited to exchange prisoners for money. The killing can only be decided by the Imam or his deputy. No one else has the right to do so. Now, the Imam in this case is Mullah Omar, the supreme Taliban leader. It sets out a very strict hierarchy. Now, this is expected to be followed by the Taliban. Of course, the question is, Jonathan, just how closely will this be followed? Also, a question of why is it being released now with so much focus on the Taliban both in Pakistan and Afghanistan?
Well, let me ask you about question number one. They're calling for fewer civilian killings, fewer arbitrary killings. Is there any evidence that since this booklet has been released, that counsel is being followed or taken seriously?
Well, the booklet was actually released in May. It's now being distributed. If we just look at Pakistan, for example, we've seen fierce fighting here between the Taliban and the Pakistan military. Why that was undertaken was because of the Taliban taking a stronghold and gaining control of areas very close to Islamabad in the Swat Valley. Now, there we know that atrocities were committed against civilians. We know that civilians were beheaded, women were forced to stay indoors, buildings were torched, the bodies of people slain were dragged through the streets and laid out to intimidate people, and hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people from that area have fled as a result of the Taliban fighting. There's also been reports today that some hardliners in the Taliban won't abide by this code. They are fighting a tough fight and they want to continue doing business as usual, Jonathan.
What about the Afghan soldiers, the Western soldiers who are fighting the Taliban? Are they taking this seriously?
Well, we're getting a response from NATO forces and US forces inside Afghanistan who are pointing to the fact that the great majority of civilian casualties are in fact inflicted by the Taliban. This has also been dismissed as propaganda, an attempt to try to win over people as people continue to flee or turn away from the Taliban. Interesting as well that it comes just before the elections in Afghanistan. This code of conduct describes the Afghan government as a, quote, slave government, and says that people must be induced to turn away from that government. It also comes, Jonathan, at a time that the US and others are beginning to reach out to what they see as the good Taliban, the more moderate elements of the Taliban that they may be able to negotiate with. This is an attempt, or being seen as an attempt by the leadership of the Taliban, to reassert their authority and hold the Taliban firm.